Crescent City Steakhouse, a true neighborhood restaurant operated by the Vojkovic family since 1934, is the oldest steakhouse in the city of New Orleans. Serving only hand-cut, prime-aged, corn-fed beef for over 80 years, Crescent City Steakhouse has become a dining destination for both die-hard locals and adventurous travelers who seek traditional, timeless New Orleans cuisine. Crescent City Steakhouse, 1001 North Broad, on the corner of St. Philip, in the heart of New Orleans. So here's the bottom line. Well, it's funny that you say that. Let me tell you. Good evening and welcome to Primetime Sports. This is our March Madness special. You're going to have wall-to-wall hoops with Coach John Brady, and we're going to visit with LSU head coach Will Wade talking about his game in the NIT. But first things first, great news in the Crescent City came down today. Drew Brees is officially a Saint going into his 13th and 14th seasons. He signed a 2-year, $50 million deal. We can all take a collective sigh of relief. Hey, bad news though, Delvin Breaux not tendered. The New Orleans native is going to probably test free agency. Who knows, he might still come back. He just did not get tendered a contract. Speaking of free agency, the Saints, as you know, picked up safety Kirk Coleman to replace Kenny Vaccaro a couple weeks ago. Is maybe a Jimmy Graham in the future. In other Saints news, yesterday, Zach Strief, well, he officially retired after 12 seasons. He is one of the original Saints under head coach Sean Payton. In hoops, we just mentioned LSU. They're going to be playing at home tomorrow night in the NIT against the UL Raging Cajuns. That's going to be a great matchup at 6 o'clock in the PMAC. Try to get there if you can. Southeastern is also playing the NIT. They're playing against one of the NCAA snubs at St. Mary's. They're going to play that first game out west, and UNO is going to play in a postseason tournament, the CIT. Hey, by the way, Nichols women are the only Louisiana team that made it to the NCAA tournament. First time ever under Coach Doobie Plaisance. Congratulations to her. And like we said, March Madness is here. Conference champions UVA, Villanova, Kansas, and Xavier all won seeds. Kentucky won the SEC. Arizona also won out west. They're in the tournament as 4 and 5 seeds. Hey, the spring practice for LSU that started on Sunday, and also for the Tulane Green Wave, that started on Monday. So they're all getting ready. And in golf, how about Tiger? He is back. That's right. He hit that great 44-foot putt to stay in contention on 17 at the Valspar. Also, Patrick Reed, the LSU former star, he finished tied for second with Tiger, and they were one stroke behind Paul Casey. In other news, Jake Arrieta, the great Chicago Cubs pitcher, former Cy Young, $75 million deal with the Phillies. Congrats to him. And the Pelicans, well, they're about to have a bunch of home games. They play at home tonight against Charlotte and on the road against San Antonio, and they come back home for a bunch of games. Their 10-game win streak's over, but they are squarely in playoff contention. We have a big March Madness show for you tonight, right here. Stay tuned on Primetime.
The love of my life is a shady lady, turned me up just to bring me down. Used to be calm, but now she's crazy, I don't mind. She's not the love of my life anymore. Yup. Ha ha. I like this guitar.
Welcome back to Primetime Sports, and I'm like a kid on Christmas morning because it is March Madness, and this is our March Madness show here on Primetime Sports. Man, last year we had Jordy Holtberg along with basketball analyst John Brady to break it down. This year it was supposed to be Tim Brando and John Brady, but Tim got real sick last night. He cannot make it, but we're going to make do. Because I got John, he's been to a Final Four. He knows what it takes to get there. And don't forget, we're also going to have Will Wade talk about his season and his appearance tomorrow night in the NIT against University of Louisiana Raging Cajuns. So, but first off, we're going to get in with Coach Brady. You know, he's been, like I said, last year he was on 15 times. This year it's been more once a month, but it's March Madness, Coach. And we got you in coming a little more often.
Well,
Thanks for coming.
I got a real job this year a little bit.
You do have a real job.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Talking
LSU basketball, you're doing a great job. I'm telling you, you have a melodious voice, a lot of melody.
Is that what that means?
Yeah, that's what it means.
I've never been told my voice was
It's folksy and home. It makes you feel like you're at home when I'm listening to you and Chris.
Just brings you right in,
It
doesn't
does.
Yeah.
You're a very good conversationalist. Well, hopefully you're a good conversationalist today. For the first time, I have notes out here today. I am ready. There's 68 teams to talk about, so let's get going.
Just lead me in, baby.
I'm going to lead you, Coach. I'll be the point guard, and you just take it home.
That's right.
But first off, every year, there's snubs. And I know it's been talked about on the other networks the last 2 days, but when you think of this year, I think there's like 8 teams at least that could say, hey, man, we really deserve to be in this tournament. What comes to your mind first when you think of the team or teams that should be in?
Well, I think the biggest one's Oklahoma State.
Yes.
That's what everybody seems to be talking about. They beat Oklahoma twice.
They beat Kansas
They beat
twice.
Kansas twice.
They beat West Virginia on the road. They beat Texas Tech. They beat a lot of not just good teams, but highly ranked teams and teams that are 1 and 3 seeds and 2 seeds and stuff like that.
So there's a case when you let an Oklahoma in and not an Oklahoma State. I think there's some discussion there, and there are a couple others the committee eliminated. I'll just briefly say something about Middle Tennessee. They had a 33 RPI. They are the highest RPI team that didn't get in the NCAA tournament for whatever reason. I know they got upset there in their conference tournament, but it's so hard for a mid-major school now to get in the NCAA tournament. And I think the way they're computing the strength of schedules and RPIs with the quadrants and such, I think it favors the high major programs and not the lower major programs or the mid-level programs.
There's 3 others that stick out to me. One of them, by the way, since you mentioned that low RPI, how about this? Only the 4th time in tournament history that you had a top 25 team not make it, a team that's been in the top 20 all season long and still is 25. That's St. Mary's, the Gales. Their non-conference schedule really hurt them. They didn't get in. They have a great player, too. Maybe not a Trey Young, but they got a Jock Langday who would be an NBA player. He's a big fella. But here's one that kind of bothered me a little bit for a reason. I thought Notre Dame, they have Bonzie Colson, I think is one of the best big men in the entire country. They did not play. They played without him for about 13 to 15 games. And they came back, and you saw what they were at the beginning of the season when you saw them live in Hawaii. They rolled LSU. And then you saw them late in the season when he came back, and they did lose to Duke, but they beat a good Virginia Tech team that's in the tournament. They also had that first-round win. I thought that's a team that has a real argument.
Well, no question. I saw Mike Bray's team, Notre Dame's team, in Maui, and I told him after the way they played in Maui, I thought he possibly could make a run to the Elite Eight if his team had stayed healthy. And I think during the course of the year, if you have 1 or 2 of your best players out for 13 games, as you just talked about, it affects the play of that team. And what bothers me a little bit is because you win some games in December doesn't mean you're the same team in February. You can improve, but you also can get a little bit worse if things don't go your way. And I think that's what happened to some of these teams. And I love Avery Johnson. I like Alabama, and I think he's got a collection of good players. I think they play hard. I think they do a lot of positive things. But a 19-15 team, 8-10 in the SEC, and they make the NCAA tournament, losing 7 of their last 10 games, at some point in time, there has to be an eye test. Forget all the statistics and all the things you configure about strength of schedule and those types of things. At some point in time, the last 10 or 12 games, you have to put an eye test to them and say they're not as good as they were in December, therefore they may not deserve to be in.
We saw a picture of a guy that might be part of the reason that, because the 2 teams that you kind of alluded to, Oklahoma and Alabama, both happen to have super electric guards that will be lottery picks named Trey Young and Colin Sexton. And they're both freshmen of the years in their conference, and obviously Trey Young even a little bit more. But does that have anything to do with it?
Well, absolutely. Well, take, and we'll talk about this later, the Arizona team. They lose 2 games at home, 0-3 in the league, and they're not the same team then that they are now, and they're getting what they deserve based on the way they've played. And I think sometimes these teams get a little bit worse. They shouldn't be in the NCAA tournament, but because the way they figure the RPI now, if you win in December, you've got a chance. If you hold on against top 75 teams, you don't slip as much. And I think that's wrong. I think that's unfair to other teams.
Well, it's funny because you mentioned that with Arizona, starting slow, ending strong, but the team across state, really just a few miles away, Arizona State, finished super fast. I mean, started fast, surprised everybody with huge wins. You know, the Kansas, Xavier, they beat some really good teams, and they petered out down the stretch once again, they have two pretty electric guards. So that's a team many people thought they shouldn't get in, but it wouldn't surprise me if they make a VCU-type run, because that's what happens. You get good guards in the tournament, particularly if you have two like the Sun Devils do, you might cause some damage.
Well, they've got a tough early game in that play-in game. We'll see what happens after that one.
Yeah, and other teams I thought had an argument. USC, I was out in L.A., did their game. I know they did lose Benny Boatwright to injury, but, man, their point guard, McLaughlin's very good. I really was hoping that they'd get in. But here's something that hit me, because Louisville's another one that's on that bubble that did not make it. Oklahoma State, we just talked about, probably the most deserving team. And then USC, those three teams are bit by the scandal. At least there's been talk about them potentially having some damages coming down the line. Do you think that might have had an effect when the committee's deciding between one or the other? Because it's kind of coincidental if not.
Scott, I would hope not. I would hope not. I'm sitting on the committee, and because something might happen to them in terms of the FBI investigation or the recruiting scandal, whatever the case may be, I hope they judge those teams particularly on what they did throughout the course of the year, and not maybe something that might happen down the line to penalize them. I hope they didn't do that.
And one last team that might have a gripe, although I don't think many people had them in, when you finish 13-5 in a Power 5 conference, you think you're probably going to be in, right? Well, Nebraska did that in the Big Ten, and they did not get in. So there's a lot. But the ones that should feel happy that got in, I think Syracuse might have been a surprise to some. But Jim Boeheim's your coach. I don't mind this because I like Boeheim and I like him in, but I don't think they deserve to be in. We mentioned Arizona State and Oklahoma, and here's a couple others that have marquee names, but I don't know if they had better resumes than teams that got in. Texas, they stumbled in there, and so did UCLA, in my opinion. I don't think they're undeserving, but I think there's a couple teams, in my opinion, a la Oklahoma State or USC, others that maybe should have deserved it.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of Texas getting in. I thought during the course of the year they weren't consistent enough with their play, and they beat a couple of good teams, surprised a couple of teams, but I think overall I don't think their quality of play and quality of wins and the consistency, the inconsistency of them, I think should have kept them out of the NCAA tournament. And then I go back to our Alabama team in the SEC. I know we talked about that conference earlier on, but I think that's another team that maybe not should have gotten in based on what they accomplished, particularly late in the year.
And you know what? When we say these things, sometimes these teams go on a roll. Remember, everybody was poo-pooing VCU that year, and VCU made it to the Final Four. They had to do the playing game. They got 5 wins, including a big win over number 1 Kansas, and then they got all the way to the Final Four the year Butler went to the Final Four. Remember, Butler played Duke and lost on that last second shot. But you got a comment before I move forward?
Yeah, you make good points about that. And this is for discussion before the NCAA tournament starts.
Right.
But once it starts, it's going to be a quality tournament.
Yeah.
People forget about this.
Yeah.
They talk about it early, but once we get into the tournament, there are really some good matchups that we're going to talk about in a minute.
Including some of these teams we're kind of poo-pooing on.
No question.
All right, let's talk about this, though, because now let's talk about the teams that are in, and let's introduce them to everybody, because we know March Madness is the time when the casual fan will join in. And the names that many people do not know today will become household names in 2 weeks if they continue in. And that's what I love about March Madness. And let's give a team, I think you and I didn't even know the entire starting lineup for the number 1 overall team, the Virginia Cavaliers, who, by the way, some say might be the best defensive team since the bringing in of the shot clock. That's how good this team is in defensive efficiency. There's a lot of things you can talk about. Let's just say this. Tony Bennett knows how to coach defense, and they're real good.
Well, let me say, I don't think anybody has scored over 70 points against them this year.
No.
And then on the second thing is, the way the rules are set this year, a 30-second shot clock, and when people drive and you extend your arm at all, they call fouls. It's all set up in favor of the offense. And for them to defend as well as they do, nobody has scored 70 on them. Their field goal percentage, defensive stat is quite good. It's around 39%. The way they rebound the ball is unbelievably great. So that team right there, to do what they've done and the way they do it is different, but they have a chance really to win a national championship, in my opinion.
All right, we're going to introduce you to a few players. Kyle Guy. Some people might remember him as the white dude with a little bit of a ponytail on top. I think he's now since shaved it. You can kind of see it in the back right there. This is their team leader. He's about 6'5". He averages 14 points, plays 32 minutes. They have 4 guys that give you about 30 minutes a game, and then they shuffle in 4 more that kind of rotate around and give you about 19 or 20 minutes a game. But they've got some players you don't know about, Devin Hall being another one. I love this guy's all-around game. Ty Jerome fills it up. He's averaging 11 points, but nobody averages more than 14. Guys 14, you got Hall at 12. Isaiah Wilkins is the senior. He's kind of been their heart and soul. 6.6 rebound type of guy. You're not going to see like a Villanova type Jalen Brunson where they got a guy with 20 and they got a few of these guys.
That you know is a pro.
Right.
Virginia's not a one-and-done program like Kentucky. They don't have pro guards, it seems, unless somebody pops up here that we don't know about and gets an opportunity in the NBA to show what he can do. But I think it's just a compliment to Tony Bennett, the style he plays on both ends of the floor. It's a team game, and he does a great job of coaching it year in and year out.
Yeah, two other guys. Well, DeAndre Hunter might be a pro. That's the one guy that could be a pro. In this system, you're not going to see it.
Right.
But Big Jack Salt does all the things you don't see in the box score. He's a 7-footer from New Zealand that just will knock you out. This dude's big, strong, good defender, and they also have Mamadi Diakate, who's good. So that's kind of introducing you to Virginia. A team I think needs no introduction with basketball fans is the Villanova Wildcats, the second number one seed. They were number one all year. One team thrives on defense, that is Virginia. The other thrives on offense, that's Villanova. You've been high on Villanova for a couple of years. When you first retired from Arkansas State, you came on 2 years ago, before you were the basketball analyst last year, and you kept talking about how much you love Jay Wright.
I like Jay Wright. He's always had great guards there. He's always been a guard-oriented team. He shoots the three ball. They make the three ball. And I'll tell you what else about all these number one seeds. All of them shoot it well from the three-point line. They all shoot around 40% from the three-point line.
You stole my line.
Oh, did I?
No, that's great.
That's one common thread.
Villanova's 40%, UVA 39%, Kansas 41%. Xavier may be a little lower because they shoot so many. They shot 100 of them, and they make a lot. So you're right. The three ball has gotten them to their one seed.
Well, that's one common thread they do have, and I think that the drawback with Villanova in the past is they didn't have anybody around the goal. The last couple of 3 years, they've had better play around the basket to be able to defend the other guy's best post player. But the other teams, the number one seeds, also shoot the three ball well, but the other three teams that we're going to talk about two more, they're certainly defensive-oriented teams too. They play well defensively.
One thing about Villanova, they won the title last year. They have great offense, great coaching, but they're one of the teams in this tournament. We're going to talk about a few of the others that have an incredible 1-2 punch. I think you have 3 NBA players in this team, but 2 of them stand out, averaging both around 20 points. I think Jalen Brunson, to me, he might not be the best player in college basketball, but I think he is the most valuable player in college basketball. And I think he should get it 20 points a game, 5 assists, 3 rebounds. And the thing about this dude, he shoots it well with efficiency. 53% from the field for a point guard, over 80% from the line, and 42% from 3. Him and Michael Bridges are a great 1-2 combo.
Well, you take him off that team, and they're not nearly as good. And the numbers that he's put up, and it goes back to experience. They know what they're doing. They've been there before. And anytime you can have those type of guards, experienced guards that have been there before, it certainly makes the coaching a little bit easier to have great guards.
Yeah, Phil Booth is that other guy I think will be a pro as well. He's a shooting guard. Dante DiVincenzo does a lot of things well. Hey, let's get to Kansas, though. A couple weeks ago, we might have talked about them being at best a 4 seed. They went on a roll like they usually do. Bill Self's a great coach, another great coach. And they always seem to have that one guy that becomes a senior. Last year was Frank Mason, who stands out and becomes a leader. This year, well, you know who he is, Devontae Graham right there. Very special player, very special team.
Well, Graham played under Mason's maybe shadow last year a little bit. Had some good games, but he is really an outstanding guard. In fact, he's playing the point for him now. And then with the addition of Malik Newman, the transfer from Mississippi State, those two guys together are really, really special players. And they're really playing well right now. And I think that makes a difference going into the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, they have guys that have been around, too. I mean, as a Bouquet had to sit out the big fella out of the Big 12 tournament. I think he's going to be back. I love the strength that he brings to this team. And you got the shooter out there, Svi Mikhailic. He's averaging 15, and LaGerald Vick's been around. They're a team that's not on the radar anymore, but if they had been stuck at a 4 seed like they were a few weeks ago, you'd have been like, this team can win it all. The other first seed is probably the team that needs the most introduction because they've never been in this position. It's Xavier. They always seem to surprise us as a 5 to 8 seed and get up to the Elite 8, but now they're expected to be there, and I happen to do a game there this year, and that is a special place to watch basketball, the Centos Center in Cincinnati. And Chris Mack, who you see right there, is a great coach, and he has one superstar player, and his name's Trayvon Blewett, and this guy can do everything, Coach.
Well, Chris Mack's one of those coaches to me at an elite level because his team is not only good offensively, they're really efficient defensively. They play both ends of the floor very well. Some teams are better on the offensive end, some teams are better on the defensive end. Chris Mack has done a great job at Xavier over a number of years, and they really have a great balance of offense plus a tough, tenacious defensive team. Yeah,
J.P. McCurr is another guy, and they have a three-headed monster with their bigs, one of them being Cantor, who's from Turkey. And I love watching them. They will put up the three of them. If you want to watch a team that's fun, check out Xavier, because they will get after it.
700 or so threes.
Yeah. I mean, they made a lot of them too, Coach.
That's right.
They made about 37%. All right, we're going to get more into this.
That's a scary movie right there.
That's your introduction to the one seeds. But there are some teams that many think are much better than those. Maybe the Michigan States, who's a 3 seed. Maybe Arizona, who's a 4 seed. A bunch of great 2s as well. We're going to get into all those and more coming up later in the show. But next, we're going to get off the NCAA tournament for a second and bring in Will Wade. He's coming. He's going to talk about the NIT matchup with the UL-Raging Cajuns. Last week, remember we had Bob Marlin on before he knew he was going to be in the NIT. I think he felt he was going to go to the NCAA, but they did lose. They got upset. So that's going to be a great matchup. But coming up next, it's Will Wade. And don't forget, more tournament talk with my basketball analyst right here, John Brady, after that next segment with the LSU Bayou Bengal coach right here on Primetime.
The owners of the Delachaise Wine Bar on St. Charles Avenue have opened up their newest creation uptown on Maple Street called Chez Delachaise, a new local wine bistro featuring a larger menu of small and large plates, a brighter atmosphere, and full table service. Additionally, patrons can enjoy a large patio out front as well as an extensive wine list offering selections from around the world. It's Chez Delachaise, 7708 Maple Street between Carrollton and Broadway.
Rock and roll will never die. It's old New Orleans, my oh my. Come on, baby, let's go rock and roll at the city lane. All night, let's roll, let's rock and roll. Baby, do the rock and roll. At Mid-City Lane's the home of rock and roll.
Fall in love with autumn with PJ's new seasonal lattes. Our pumpkin latte brings you all the flavors of a pumpkin pie with hints of cinnamon and nutmeg, like your favorite holiday dessert in a cup. And our s'mores latte with flavors of toasted marshmallows, warm milk chocolate, and graham cracker cinnamon is sure to bring back campfire memories. The PJ's Fall Seasonal Lattes, available at your local PJ's only for a limited time.
Welcome back to Primetime Sports. You are in the middle of our March Madness special, and I'm going to keep John Brady on this set for this next segment because we're going to go from the NCAA tournament to the NIT. And if you asked me before the season, would LSU have a chance to get to the NIT, I said, it's a long shot. But look at this. They had a 6-game improvement in the SEC from 2-16 to 8-10. They're 17-14 overall with great victories over Michigan, Houston, swept Arkansas, swept Texas A&M, and several other good wins. Missouri's in there as well. So those are all NCAA tournament teams that LSU's beaten, and it's only going to keep getting better and better. My next guest is Will Wade. He's been on the show. He came on that show. We had Karl Malone and the Governor, and I can't wait to talk to him. Will Wade, welcome back to the show. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back on, Scott.
Hey, first things first, I got John Brady with me. And before we get into the tournament, I have to ask you a question. Most coaches by nature are a little bit paranoid. I think, coaches will admit that. You bring John Brady in, a former Final Four coach, to do the radio for LSU along with Chris Blair. What made you feel comfortable about Coach to let him travel with the team like that?
Oh, he's been great. Coach has been a tremendous resource for us. He sits in there on some film sessions and will point us in the right direction sometimes. So it's been a great resource for myself and our staff to have him around, and just an extra set of extra set of eyes, and he's always got some good ideas. So he's been fun to get to know him better and build a relationship with him, and we're certainly pleased that he was able to spend the year with us. And from what they say, he does a pretty good job on the radio. Although I hadn't heard it, but they say he's pretty good.
Well, if you ever need any time to get yourself some sleep, go ahead and listen to him. He's got that soothing voice, and watch the replay. Now, he is great at what he does. I listen to it every single game. I got to ask you a quick question. The unknown of you coming down to Louisiana, a state that you haven't spent much time, if any at all, before you got here. What have you learned in the past year about being down here and the way things are run?
Well, I've learned quite a bit. It's been a great experience. First off, the people down here are tremendous. Some of the best people in the country, unbelievably hospitable, and just really good folks. And so I've enjoyed getting to meet a lot of the people and building relationships with folks down here. And that's been probably the most fun part of our first season here. And then certainly basketball-wise, you learn. We got a long way to go. We got a lot of work to do. With our team, we got a lot of work to do internally to get our program where we need it to be. And so, it's just a matter of trying to get a feel for the moving parts of LSU, the moving parts around the state within the basketball world, and get your hands around that to where you can, be as successful as you want to be and build the program how you want it to be built. And certainly guys like Coach Brady and some other folks around the state have been very helpful and kind of nudging us in the right direction. They don't tell you what to do, but they kind of nudge it towards where you should be going.
Well, Will, John Brady here. First of all, I appreciate the kind words, and I can't thank you enough. I sent you a couple of texts about that, about how you treated me and made me feel, and I really appreciate that. The Legends thing this past weekend was something you had to approve, and I'll always be grateful for allowing me to represent LSU like that. But coming into LSU in this year, knowing what it was the year before, and I know you don't want to be in a reflective mood as much now because you got an important game, against Lafayette and this NIT thing coming up. But coming in, what were you trying to establish, and what did you want to create? And do you feel like everything has been positive in that regard?
Well, I think the number one thing with our fans, we want to just establish a little bit of credibility, a little bit of a buzz and excitement that hey, look, this isn't the finished product, but we're certainly moving in the right direction. We're moving in a positive direction towards something that's going to be very, very good and very, very successful here. And then within our team, we wanted to, establish a culture is a little bit of an overused term, but we wanted to establish a way of doing things that all of our guys know, all of our guys are familiar with, and that can be passed down from year to year and team to team. Where hey, this is how we do things. This is what good looks like. This is what we expect. We expect you to show up. We expect you to give great effort in everything that you do, and we want that stuff to be passed down. And that's when you can build a program. So these guys who have started here with us have helped lay a foundation that's going to be something that we can build off of here in the future as we put together a total program from our fans to our infrastructure, to our team, to our staff, everything. We just got to have a total program, and a lot of the folks that we've run across this first year have helped us establish that. I do think we're on our way. We're not where we want to be, but we're not where we used to be either. So we've made progress, and we've got to continue to push forward.
Coach, 7 of those 17 wins, at least 7 of them, have been against teams in the tournament. And I can name another 5 or 6 right off the top of my head, or losses that came down last possession. So that's got to make you feel good that you know that you can compete with the very best in the country. What kind of confidence does that give you going into next season?
Well, I mean, I think it's a positive, but like you said, we lost a lot of close games too. If we could have pulled a few of those out, we might be having a different conversation right now. So you always look at it as a coach from that perspective. What could we have done better? Why were our guys maybe not quite as ready for this game? Why were we not quite as good on the road down the stretch when we started off 3-0 on the road? There's a lot of things like that to look at. We've got to get that stuff correct. We've got some answers. Some of the answers are as simple as just recruiting. and some of the answers are a little more complicated, and maybe we need to change up some routines and change up the way we prepare a couple times. So we'll look at all that and examine all that, because we want to make sure we're putting ourselves in the best position to be successful, every game of every season.
Well, Coach, you got a big game coming up in this NIT thing with Lafayette. What do you know about them? How have you prepared? And what do you think about the opponent coming up here with being, I guess, 20 miles down the road? What do you think about that? Yeah.
Well, ULL is a very good team. They've got, their point guard's a transfer from South Carolina. Their 2 guards a transfer from BYU. Their 3-man's a transfer from Southern Cal. 4-man's a transfer from Missouri. Their 5-man Washington was a great player at St. Aug there in New Orleans. The number one thing that sticks out, they're very similar to Houston to me. They're big, they're physical, they're rugged, they're tough, and they do a great job on the backboards. Washington's a big guy. He's one of 5 players in the country to average a double-double. And so, we're going to have to bring it, and we're going to have to play one of our better games of the year. We're going to have to play extremely well at home to win this game. And so it'll be a big challenge for us. They're a veteran team, they're an older team, and they've got very, very good players.
Speaking of those players, by the way, Coach, South Louisiana had some great basketball. The Southland Conference had 3 teams all vying for that championship, which Southeastern won. Nichols was right there. Your friend Richie Riley coaches them. What an amazing job. And, of course, UNO was there for a while. But I think most people would agree the 2 best teams in the state right now are UL. They don't like to be called ULF yet. I just learned that. It's University of Louisiana Raging Cajuns and the LSU Tigers. There's going to be a lot of pride going on this game at 6 o'clock on Wednesday evening. What are your thoughts about that? Because, hey, the last thing you want as a coach down in South Louisiana is to have UL have one up on you.
Well, I mean, we're just trying to prepare our guys the best we can and play the best we can. So, our program right now is in a little bit different stage maybe than their program is. We're just building and moving forward. And this is a team that they've been building for a while over at Lafayette. So, we're in a little bit different stage, but we're obviously want to win the game. Want to do everything we can to win the game and play our best. So we're going to just keep preparing, do what we do, and hopefully we'll play one of our better games of the season and pick up a big win, because we'd be able to advance in a postseason tournament, which is something that we want to get some experience with.
One last thing before we let you go, Coach. Like you said, you've had almost the full year here in Louisiana. And instead of a personal level and meeting the people, what have you learned playing in the SEC that you can use for next season going into the 2018-19 campaign?
Oh, it's a brutal league. Not a very forgiving league. But I think just having a little bit better familiarity with the style of play. One thing that was a little difficult this year is most of the other leagues I've been in, and Coach Brady can probably relate to this, you've got 2 or 3 teams in the league that usually play pretty similar, so you can kind of dust off the same game plan for a couple of the teams. And the SEC was not like that. You've got just all sorts of different offenses, different defensive schemes, different ways of playing. Everybody's so different, and there's not a whole lot of carryover. And so you have to familiarize yourself with something totally different, twice a week, which is very, very difficult to do, especially kind of on the fly as we were doing it. So I think just having familiarity with some of the coaches, having familiarity with their style of play, it'll help us a little bit more in our preparation, where we can practice some things maybe in the preseason that we can carry over into the season a little bit better.
Hey, Will, I liked your comment, and it's just an observation. You've got good players coming in. You're going to have a better team next year, because good players and good coaches like you are make for good teams. But I really like your comment about the NIT when they asked you if you had everybody over to your house to watch the selection, and you kind of chuckled a little bit, and you said, well, it's not something I really want to get excited about. We appreciate going to the NIT, but we have our sights set on a little better things. I thought that was really a great statement, and a really thing to put out there for our fans to understand.
Yeah, we're excited about the opportunity this year. It's a great opportunity for us, as Scott said at the beginning. But certainly we don't want to make this an annual event. We want to be playing on Thursday and Friday in the NCAA tournament, looking to advance from there.
Coach, can't thank you enough for giving us the time, just a little over 24 hours before your game. So good luck tomorrow, and good luck with the rest of your off season as well. Have some fun and just enjoy it, buddy.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it, guys.
All right.
There he is. That is head coach Will Wade. Can't say enough good things about it. From the moment he got the job, the buzz was around Tiger basketball again, and it's only growing and growing. So congratulations to him and his staff and, of course, his players as well. Hey, we're not done with March Madness. We're only just beginning. Hey, I got John Brady. He is my basketball analyst, but today he's the co-host because we're talking hoops the whole time. You want to know more about these teams that are playing in the NCAA tournament starting on Thursday? Well, actually, the play-ins are tonight and tomorrow. Well, it gets going right here. Stay tuned because we're going to give you all the info you need right here on Primetime Sports. Oh, the kid in the candy store is back. It's Christmas morning. I want to thank Coach Wade for joining us for that segment to talk about his matchup tomorrow night. If you can get down to the Assembly Center, the general admission tickets are only $10, and you get there early. You're on the front row. So go and check them out, and let's support the Tigers and the UL Raging Cajuns. I know a lot of other folks will be coming over from Lafayette. It should be a lot of fun. Now back to the NCAA tournament, because I know we only touched on the first rounders and some of the snubs and the teams that snuck in. Now we're going to talk about the 2-3 seeds, some 4s and 5s, and then look at the brackets and get some opinions from Coach Brady. Coach, first off, when I see the 2 seeds, there's one team that stands out, that the head coach has been in 34 NCAA tournaments, and you might want to guess who that might be. Do you have an idea?
34 NCAA tournaments. It has to be Duke or
there it is.
Carolina.
I didn't prep him for this. You got it. Coach K has been in 34 NCAA tournaments with the Duke Blue Devils dating back to the early mid-'80s. In fact, I remember him, one of his first great teams went and was in the Final Four with LSU in '86, and the same team beat both LSU and Duke, and that was Louisville Cardinals. But there's been sustained greatness in Durham, North Carolina.
Well, you know, he's a Hall of Fame coach and absolutely built that program, really took it over when it wasn't respected as much, and now he's just done an incredible job over ever how many years. Maybe the winningest coach in the history of the game. He's not, he's second, so and we'll continue to win, and probably we'll coach a couple more years, and then there'll be a big party for him when he retires.
The dude put some good dye in his hair because he's going to be around, it seems, for a while. And I think he might have overtaken Boeheim because when they took Boeheim's wins. I hate the vacated wins thing. That's a story on another day.
Yeah,
but moving forward, Duke, they've got 3 guys that are potential lottery picks. Not a lot of people are talking about them as a champion, but when you have the potential first overall Marvin Bagley, this dude, it's either him or DeAndre Ayton, in my opinion, at number 1. And then you also have Gary Trent Jr., another freshman whose dad was a great NBA player. And then you have the controversial Grayson Allen. This dude, by the way, is a senior now, but if you recall when he was a freshman, he wasn't starting, but he is the main reason that Duke won their national championship because Wisconsin was owning them in the first half and even into the second half, and then Grayson Allen took over. So this is a team that has a great chance to win the title despite not being number 1 seed.
Well, even Krzyzewski this year has changed that team a little bit. He moved Grayson Allen to the point at one stretch. They played more zone this year because of the length of Bagley, and it's been a more comfortable defense for them because of some of the youth they have that don't play as well in the man-to-man defense. But Krzyzewski, even with the experience he has and at his age, he changes. It made their team better, and they've got the talent and they've got the coaching. They've got a chance to win the whole thing.
And I'd be remiss not to say, Coach, perhaps this greatest loss in NCAA history was against my man John Brady, 2006, when he knocked out J.J. Redick and company to go to the Elite Eight.
The only thing I'm going to say about that is I want somebody to research. We held Duke to 54 points in the regional tournament in Atlanta. I'd like to see when's the last time Duke scored 54 points in any game.
That's been a while. I'll research that. You should have told me before the show. I could have done this. That's the thing. We don't script. We just talk, and that's what I love. Hey, when you're talking about ACC teams, you always got to bring up North Carolina, a team that has 10 losses. In fact, the most losses ever by a 2 seed, but they got strong when it mattered most towards the end of the season. They're led by a former walk-on, Luke May, and he doesn't own the bar walk-ons. He's the guy that owns some great records now at UNC. He's doing some great things, but this team with their point guard Joel Berry is another that is dangerous as well.
Well, I've always said, you start with the point guard, NCAA tournament play, and they've got a great one in Berry, experienced guy. And I've always kept it real simple, and it's like I told Will Wade on our conversation on the phone with him. I've always said that good players, good coaches make for good teams. And certainly Roy Williams is one of the better coaches to ever coach college basketball. They recruit great players at North Carolina. He's got a chance to win it too because of the way they're playing right now, particularly down the stretch.
And they are the defending champions. And even though they lost some great players, Kenny Williams is a defensive specialist. Theo Penson's nice. And the Pitt transfer, Cameron Johnson, love his game. All right, here's the next 2 seed I want to talk about is Cincinnati. And that's a team that I always love to bounce out of the tourney early despite their high seed. This is the year I'm not going to do it because I've never seen they've always had great defense.
Right.
But for once, they have a very balanced offense. Of course, it all starts, the straw that stirs the drink is Gary Clark. But Mick Cronin has got his guys playing both sides. Their offensive efficiency is almost as good as their defensive efficiency. And I think that's the first time you can say that about Cincinnati since the Kenyon Martin days back when Bob Huggins was coaching in the late 90s.
Well, I've always liked Nick Cronin and how he coaches his team and how they play. I like the toughness of them. I like them defensively. I like the way they rebound the ball. And going back to what you like, they shoot the 3-ball better this year than they had in the past. They have better offense coupled with great defense. They've got an opportunity to advance. I think I've got them going to the Elite 8.
You know what? We'll talk about that. Their path is a lot easier than the number 1 seed in the South, and that's Virginia. We're going to get in that in a second. Let's talk about the last number 2 team. There's a team that was on fire early in the season, and they faltered a little bit late, but they started picking up steam again, and they're dangerous, and that's the Purdue Boilermakers, and they're like that train you see right there. If you get them going, they've got a couple players. They've got that big giant who actually is a real giant. He's like 7'4", and Isaac Haas, but they've got a couple guys, the Edwards brothers, and some really good shooting.
Well, they have some tremendous size around
Look
the
at that guy. Look how big he is.
Those guys they got tremendous size, and that always makes for a tough defensive matchup. You've got to defend the post first, and then you move out from that when you have inside play like Purdue does. A rugged Big Ten team. They're going to be physical. They're good enough offensively to beat you. And I think they're a solid team. I don't know as much about them because they don't get a lot of exposure down this way on TV.
Not nationally, just the Big Ten games a week.
They're a quiet, very talented, very good, well-coached team in Match Payne.
And if you want a sneaky team that not a lot of people will be picking to go to the Final Four despite their lofty seed, that could be one if you want to differentiate yourself. All right, here's a couple teams that I think most people feel are in the top 5 to 7 in the entire country, but they are not a 1 or 2 seed. And I think it's kind of obvious who I'm going with. There's number 3 seed Michigan State, who, I mean, come on, this team might be the most balanced that Tom Izzo's ever had. That's how good they are. And then you have the 4 seed Arizona. I think both these teams could have even gotten a 2 seed and maybe even a 1 in Michigan State's, obviously in their case. But let's start with the Spartans. Because Tom Izzo's been there before, and he has got A, a superstar, and B, a nice supporting cast.
Well, again, a great coach with maybe the best player in the Big Ten.
Miles Bridges, you see him right
Miles
there.
Bridges, maybe the best player in the Big Ten. Great coaching with the most valuable player in any league. Makes for good teams, and they've always recruited well. The thing about Izzo's team, it's no different than it's been the last 10 years. He's a defensive-minded, rebounding team. He's got real good offense this year. He's got inside game. They're another team that has a chance to get there in the Final Four, particularly at least to the Elite 8.
Well, let's introduce this team because I think they're worthy of introduction. Miles Bridges is, think of a less selfish, bigger Carmelo Anthony. And I think this guy can do it all. I think he's going to be a dynamite pro. But they have big guys. They have Nick Ward, who's just a big load in the middle, and he's got a nice soft touch. And also they got a guy New Orleanians might know well, this Jaren Jackson's son.
That's right.
Is Jaren Jackson Jr., and he is a fantastic big man right there. And Jaren obviously played at Cohen here, and he always went to Georgetown and had some great teams. But what I love, Coach, I know you love defense and rebound, but you also love good guard play, particularly in the tournament. And they've got 2 great ones. Cassius Winston at the point, Josh Langford at the 2. This is why I think this is a balanced team that has a chance to take it all.
Well, it's a disciplined team offensively. It comes off of their defense and the way he approaches his coaching philosophy. But they're a disciplined team offensively. The right player takes the right shot at the right time.
Two teams out west that I really love. Arizona, obviously head coach Sean Miller's had some controversy this season, but he's got not only the two best players in the big Pac-12, and I think this is not even a question. DeAndre Ayton might be the best in the country. He is hot at the right time. That's the big fella, 7'1" guy from Bahamas. And then you have Alonzo Trier, who was last year's Pac-12 Tournament Player of the Year. This year it was Ayton, and he's also the Pac-12 Player of the Year, not just the tournament. So these two guys give that 1-2 punch, kind of like I talked about Villanova's, except Villanova's are more guard heavy. These are more big man heavy.
Well, I agree with you. Ayton may be the most valuable player in the country. He's playing as well as anybody. I really like Sean Miller and the way he coaches his team. I had the privilege of being out there a few times. My daughter went to Arizona, the one that's danced with Katy Perry, majored in dance. So when I would go out there and visit her, I got to be up close with Sean Miller, watch him practice 4 or 5 times. He runs a great practice. He's a great coach. He's got great players, the best big man in the country. They got a chance, a real chance to win the thing.
All right, we talked about great coaches. We've talked about Jay Wright. We've talked about Tony Bennett, and we talked about those legends just now, Izzo and Coach K. But one guy I think is finally getting his due is Gonzaga's Mark Few. Last year they got to the finals. They had some really good players, but they lost some really good players. He brings back some of their role players, Jonathan Williams being one, Josh Perkins being another. But they've got a couple foreigners that I love, and I mean love. Killian Tilly, remember this kid's name? He's from down there in New Zealand area, no, he's from France. But he can play, and then they have a guy from Japan, Hachimura, Rui Hachimura. This is a team that's super balanced. Another guy, Silas Melson, that's been there before with those other guys that got to the finals. Mark Few can do it, can he?
No question about it. Gonzaga's kind of like Purdue. Don't know a lot about them because they don't get a lot of exposure down here. But I have followed their scores, and just from following their scores and who they've played and how they've won games, and I think this team, the way I sense them, this may be a better team this year than they were last year, simply because of the scores and who they beat and how they beat them.
Okay, Coach, here's what we're going to do. We're going to look at the brackets individually. You saw the big bracket earlier. Now we're going to look at them individually, and we're going to talk more about some of the SEC teams there because we haven't mentioned one of them yet. And ironically, those 8 SEC teams are seeded from 3 to 9, and that's it. There's no double seeded, there's no 1 or 2s, and there's only 1 3. That's Tennessee. But let's look at the South region first. And there you go. That's Virginia, the overall #1 seed. And here's what I want you to look. You know, their second-round game, if it's Creighton, that's going to be an amazing kind of thing because Creighton is the fastest team in college basketball. They get up and down the court. Virginia wants to slow you down. That would be an incredible matchup. But I want you to look underneath that, though. Okay. When you see Kentucky as a 5 and Arizona as a 4, just to play them in the Sweet 16 seems a little unfair for Virginia, especially when you look at Cincinnati down there at the bottom. I think most people would say they probably have an easier route. When you see their possible opponents next would be Nevada or Texas, and then after that it's probably Miami or Tennessee. So I don't think they did the #1 Cavaliers any favors here.
Well, I like Virginia against Creighton because nobody plays that kind of style, and I think Virginia's defense slows them down like they need to be slowed down. They have to play in the half court to beat Virginia. I don't think they can do it. Arizona plays Kentucky. I think Arizona wins that game by double digits. I'm
with you. Everybody's talking about how hot Kentucky is. I said, listen, man. Listen, I'll never count Calipari out. You know, when he was at that 8th seed and they beat Wichita State as a 1 and then he got all the way to the finals, he shut me up real quick. But the fact is that guy can coach. But when you look at that bracket, does Arizona, can they beat Virginia? Because I think that might be a toss-up game.
I think it'll be a great game to watch. I have picked Virginia to beat Arizona, but it's one of those things where I really just kind of flipped a coin, and whatever it fell, that's who I picked. Now, then Cincinnati's in the bottom half of that.
That's good. They're dangerous, man. That's going to be fun. All right, let's go down to the West, down underneath that in most people's brackets. You see, that's the one that they say the #1 seed obviously is the most vulnerable. Xavier, I think they're a great team. But this one, to me, when you look overall, I think this is the weakest bracket. I think it's kind of wide open. But, you know, you have Michigan, who's a lot of people are high on as the 3 seed right there in the middle. But I don't see a lot of danger. Gonzaga, a lot of people are bringing them out, and then you have UNC as the 2. They're all good teams, But what are you thinking there? Are there any surprises you see?
I don't see any surprises there. I think the UNC-Michigan matchup will be a very good game to watch. Two great coaches. They play well on both ends of the floor. I think that's the matchup I'm looking forward to in that bracket.
That's going to be fun. I'm looking Gonzaga and Xavier are two teams that I think can do damage and get there. Let's go up to I guess it's the East on the upper right in most people's things right there. Villanova obviously is the favorite there for sure. Purdue is the 2. And when you look at that bracket, do you see anything special that you like coming out?
Well, not really. I think the favorite teams will win out in that particular bracket. I got Virginia Tech beating Alabama.
That's the kiss of death, right?
Game.
When you say that, there's a 15 going to beat a 2, and then all this other stuff happens. Wichita State is one of those sneaky teams. If they were a lower seed, I'd call them, if they're a 4, and I know they've been good for a while, but they've earned that respect kind of like Gonzaga has, whereas like you almost can't call them a mid-major anymore because they've gotten so good. Now let's go to the bracket of death.
Butler in that side is an underrated team, too, nationally.
Well, that's one of my sleepers. I was going to say that. But, yeah, Butler is certainly a sleeper, along with Creighton, Butler, Nevada, Rhode Island, and I'll throw Wichita, even though there are 4 sleepers. But this Midwest region, I mean, this is the region last year. Do you remember the region? That might have been the Midwest as well, when you had North Carolina, very strong North Carolina. You had UCLA and Kentucky, and UCLA had Lonzo Ball and all those guys, and they were all on that one side, so you had UCLA having to play Kentucky in the Sweet 16. Well, you have that here because you have Duke as a 2, Michigan State as a 3, and they're slated to go into the Sweet 16 way early. And I think that's a Final Four type matchup that you're putting in the Sweet 16, and I know part of this is for ratings, but, man, Kansas, Michigan State, Duke, there is no question in my mind this is the toughest bracket.
No question about it. I think that's where they have a problem with the seeding, having those type of teams meet that early in the Sweet 16. But, that's just the way it worked. That's why it's going to be an exciting tournament. We talk about who's in, who's out. But once this thing starts, matchups like that are what the NCAA tournament's all about. And this one is going to be a good one early on because I think there's no question those two will play in the Sweet 16.
And Auburn's got firepower. They're a 4, and I think they're getting a little undervalued here, but they did lose their defensive specialists. 2 things before we close.
Okay.
SEC teams, I told you they rank from 3 to 9, obviously seeded, I should say. And one of them is Tennessee. I think most people consider them dangerous. Kentucky's a 5, and you saw Auburn there as a 4. Do any of them have a chance to get to the Final Four? If so, name them, and then give me who you think will go to the Final Four.
I don't think any SEC team has a chance to even get past the Sweet 16.
And Florida's a 6. I mean, they have history.
I think the Florida bracket, they have an opportunity maybe to get to the Sweet 16. Tennessee possibly, but the rest of those teams I think will either lose the first round or at least the second round.
Wow. Sweet 16s from the former SEC coach. How about this? Who do you like to win this tournament? I don't want to put the pressure on you, but we will revisit this.
Well, I don't even know who's in what bracket, because we just got confused and looking at all that.
There's a lot of stuff going on.
But I like Arizona's team. I like the way they're playing, but I'm going to tell you, I like the Kansas team and the way they play down the stretch. I like the looseness, the confidence they're playing with. I like what happened to them early. It seemed like they learned their lesson, losing a couple of games at home. And I think right now they're playing as good as anybody in the country. You
just said something, and only a coach would pick this up completely, but they are playing loose, unlike former Kansas teams where the pressure was on them.
Got a little tight.
They didn't come out. Wasn't a ton expected. They're always expected to win the Big 12, but because they lost so many great players, and Josh Jackson, who was a lottery pick, they weren't a lot. Frank Mason was their leader. He was the Big 12 player of the year, and some padded him as the country's player of the year. So you're right. That is a team that is coming on at the right time, and you know what? They're playing loosey-goosey. I agree. Coach, it's been great. If I had another hour, we could do that easily. It just flies, doesn't it?
It does. I love it.
Man, March Madness, I love it too. I say I love it one more time. I love it. I love it. All right, baby. We're going to talk March Madness all month. Hey, I'm going to get more Saints stuff. I told you in the open about Drew Brees. Thank goodness he signed that 2-year, $50 million deal. I know it sounds like a lot, but it's really a bargain. And he signed that today. Delvin Breaux is not tendered. We have all that. We're going to talk more Saints as we go along, but I wanted to get you ready for March Madness, and I hope we did a little bit of that. It starts tonight. You have a couple of games tonight, a couple tomorrow, and then the big day, of course, Thursday and Friday, the 2 greatest days of the year. It's like Christmas and Christmas Eve back to back. So I can't wait. Hey, everybody. Will Hill, I'm looking at you, man. What an incredible job you just did. Anthony Longi, man, my intern. phenomenal work, and Naila does the job of 12 people. I mean, doing it all. I'm very blessed to have these people working with me. I can't thank them enough. Get Well, Redhead Tsunami, and all the great folks at WLAE and CST. I can't thank you enough once again. It's March Madness. Get out there and enjoy some hoops, people. We'll be back next week and let you know what happened this previous weekend. We'll see you again. Bye-bye.